What's up, guys? It's Kyle with another episode of Unlocking Your Inner Strength. This is episode 338, if my memory serves me correctly. Today, we've got a bunch of my friends here, the marketing crew. So we have Evan, who is our director of marketing at Newell Strength. We got Okan and Owner, the brothers that have been doing all the great videography and social media work for us. So they'll add a whole new element to this podcast. So, guys, thanks for being with me today.
Yeah.
First thing, before I get into what I want to discuss in today's episode, we had a truck poll this weekend. It was on Saturday. First time we've ever done it. We had 12 guys. Took second place in the 12-man poll, took first place in the 6-man poll once we figured out the technique. But it was something like that made me think of the grit and the perseverance that I've learned throughout the years in the gym. I always tell people that the gym is your greatest teacher. You know, for me, it has been when I look back at the lessons I've learned. So today I'm going to share 3 stories with you all and the lessons I took away from them from my time in the gym. And there's a lot more than 3 stories that I'll share on other episodes, but these 3 kind of stood out to me when I was working on what to talk about today. So the first thing, back in high school, I started lifting seriously when I was like a junior, right around a junior. I'd gotten really into it with the guys I was hanging out with. It was more so about building my confidence, wanting to be a little more appealing in my mind to the girls in high school, right? I think that's a common thing with all young guys. So I started with that because I was more introverted, right? I didn't like going to parties. I was awkward socially. So I turned to the gym and I started building myself up. And that first summer, I was able to gain 30 pounds in one summer of muscle. So that was between my junior year and my senior year. And I did that primarily I would spend hours in the gym. Every day I'd be in the gym. I used to go to the local YMCA. There was one other gym. Those were really the only 2 options at that point. And I believe I chose the YMCA. My dad either picked it or it was also because they had a basketball court. And basketball was, my number one sport. I loved it. And it gave me an opportunity to practice and play throughout the year, when the weather changed. There was a book that I ordered going into my senior year. So now I was really pushing the envelope. And it was called Big Beyond Belief. It was a mail order book, which most people under a certain age probably don't even know what that is. But it was in one of the old bodybuilding magazines. There was an ad that really caught my eye. And it was about how to gain size. That's what that was my quest, like the first 4 or 5 years was how to put on size through lifting. And in that book, it laid the foundation of a lot of the philosophy I still have with training full body, kind of cycling what you're doing depending on biofeedback and how your body's responding. But training full body at the time, there was really nobody doing that besides maybe some college strength coaches and all that, but there was nobody really training full body. But the big thing that I took away from those early years, I would track everything I was eating in a notepad, pen and paper. I would weigh everything. I would look everything up in the nutrition almanac. And I would figure out what nutrients were in what food. I would figure out my macronutrients at the point, and I had a certain caloric goal I wanted to hit every day. To the point where when I would get home from school, high school, I would make fish and eggs, and I would do it was a mash shake 5,000, which was like banana flavored, it was disgusting. I actually had to plug my nose every time I drank it just to get it down. It was just awful tasting, but I was willing to do whatever I had to do to put on the size. But the tracking and the focus that it took in those early years and being very, very disciplined, you could almost say to a fault, but it laid the foundation for much of what I've been able to do with my life, just being able to stay focused on something, because success is boring, right? If you want to put on size, you got to keep doing the same things over and over. So it's not necessarily fun, but if you're looking for fun, there's other stuff you can do. So the number one lesson when I started out was focused discipline over a long period of time. I think that's key, and I think you guys could probably relate to that. I mean, Evan, you were highly ranked in the state with wrestling. Does that any of that resonate with you?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I was doing the same thing, but the opposite.
Okay.
I was strict discipline on not eating, trying to lose weight. So that's what I did all of high school and college.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And Evan was an academic All-American in college as a wrestler. So he's got the same mindset. But that sport, I've always been interested in wrestling. I never wrestled because it was during basketball season, but the discipline that it takes for, a young guy in high school, I think it's a really great sport to develop the person. That's really what you're trying to do through any of this stuff, develop yourself as a person. And the second thing, when I came out of college, 2003, I worked with Rutgers football strength and conditioning with Jay Butler, who's back there again now, the second go around with Coach Shiano. I was an intern, and there's a lot of funny stories from that summer. But the main thing I took away was I already had my training philosophy. I watched how Jay was training these guys. A lot of these guys went on to play in the NFL, and they were freaks. I mean, just genetic freaks, ripped. Some of them could have stepped right onto a bodybuilding stage with almost no preparation. And I would watch what they would eat, and I'm talking about like a bowl of oatmeal at breakfast with a stick of butter, cup of brown sugar. And they would just be shredded. But that summer, I really took my nutrition to the next level so that's right when I graduated college. My junior year in college, I got up to 260 pounds, which was way too heavy. Looking back at the pictures, I was fat, but I was strong. I was still on that quest to just eat as much as I could to put on the size. But coming out of my senior year, interning with Rutgers, I actually got really lean. I probably down to like 215 pounds. I had a six-pack and all that. And I decided at that point that I was going to compete in a natural bodybuilding show. I hadn't entered the world of testosterone or steroids yet. And that first contest I did, 2004, didn't really have too much of an idea what I was doing. I hired a local coach that took me through. So I went 4 months, basically eating 1,500 calories a day, no cheat meals at all for 4 months. So really tested my mindset and whatnot. But at the contest, I did great. I took second only to the guy that won the overall championship, who later went on to become a really high-level national bodybuilder. The next year, didn't do so well, got knocked down, and put me into a big funk. But those first two times, the issue I ran into was after the contest, I went into almost a depressed state because I was so focused on this one singular goal. Probably like if you had a wrestling match that was, you're putting everything into it. And once it's done, and you have a big letdown. Now, in the whole way there, on getting ready for it, like for me, for the bodybuilding show, you have what I would call pre-success failure because you're focused on this one point, this one peak of the mountain, and you're not there yet. So you kind of feel like a failure because you're like, well, I didn't do it. And Okan, you just ran a marathon. It's probably similar.
Right, yeah. I can completely agree with that. I was actually talking to owner about that today because you work so hard and you're so consistent with something for months on end every day. And then you finally reach the finish line with the marathon and it's like, all right, now what? You get this kind of empty, letdown feeling for some reason. It's kind of hard to manage where to put that,
Yeah.
that energy.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And, if you don't manage it, I want to say the first two times I competed, I went into a funk for like 4 months after the contest. And not only mentally, but doing things incorrectly to get ready for those shows, I ballooned up like 30, 40 pounds the week after, within a week. So you went from looking like, the statue to this just swollen tick. So that'll mess with your mind too, right? You want to get there and then try to maintain that for a period of time, which I was not able to do until I really took up fasting in later years. But I took a couple years off after 2005, had some various health issues that we'll talk about in another episode that was really life-changing. It actually led to me starting Newell Strength. But in 2007, I was reinvigorated to compete again, going through it with the health issues, another long period of depression, where I realized I had to do something because I was not going to the gym anymore. I lost 30 or 40 pounds. And I said, you know what? I'm going to compete again. I've got nothing else to do. Let me just start getting ready for that. And during that contest prep, I started reading Tony Robbins, all types of inspirational books and motivational books, which really led to the whole library I have now. But that really changed my life. And I put everything I had. I did 2 shows back to back that year. Both of them were in May. The first show, I won the novice overall, which was my first overall title, and I lost to the guy that won the open overall. It was the only guy that beat me in the show. So then the next week I had what was called the Mid-Atlantic Championships, which was the one I'd done previously a couple times. It was a bigger show, and I was very confident going into that was going to be my year to win that. But at the weigh-ins in the morning, I saw this guy, Tim Martin, who's become a good friend of mine, and I saw him with the shirt off, and I knew right. I said, "There's no way I could beat this guy." He was just unbelievable as far as bodybuilding goes. He's actually an IFBB pro now. He won the Team Universe a couple years after that. But the key thing is, I wasn't upset. I wasn't down at all because I knew I gave everything I had to get as best shape as I could. That was one of the best years I had in competing. But I was not upset about it, and I enjoyed the process. So it was different than the years prior where I just had this pinnacle, right, where I was trying to achieve this one thing. It was every day I was trying to achieve a goal, and I succeeded in that. So the big lesson from that year in particular was basically control what you could control, right? Only really think about that stuff. Anything that's out of your control, like the Tim Martin showing up at the contest, there's nothing you can do about that. That's going to happen in life. Where there's stuff that, like if we look at what's going on around the world nowadays, I'll still have to catch myself and be like, well, I can't control any of that stuff. So just worry about what I can control in my mind and the people that are, on this journey with me. So control what you can control, do the best you can. If you do that, the sky's really going to be the limit. Now, the last story, in 2012, I was playing, right? Let me back up. I was running the gym and I was teaching full time. So really running a tough schedule. I would train people. I think I would get to the gym at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, train people, and then I would go right to school. I would teach all day, then I would go right back to the gym. So there was no going home or anything like that. I'd go back to the gym and I'd be there till 9 o'clock at night. And this went on for 2-3 years. So I was starting to burn out. And I remember I got pneumonia, I played in the men's basketball game, men's league. Got pneumonia really bad. That night I started coming down with it. And I never had that before, and it was bad. Super high temperature. I couldn't even touch my skin. Everything was just painful. So did what I had to do to recover from that. But 2 weeks later, I shouldn't have been playing, but I went back, played in another men's league game. And we're playing up in Basking Ridge at the YMCA up there. And I'm running down the court, sprinting after one of my students, because remember, I'm still a teacher at this point. I'm sprinting after her dad. He was on the other team. It was like a rival team. We had a really good team. We won a couple of championships in that league. And all of a sudden, my left leg just explodes. I didn't know what the hell happened. I never had a major injury, but I'm hit the ground. And I knew it was really bad right away because all the guys are coming up, they're looking, they're covering their eyes, walking away. They actually wound up calling the game. They had to call the ambulance, all this type of stuff. And I didn't know what the heck had happened, but I knew it was serious. So ambulance takes me to the hospital, and we called Devin because she wasn't at the game. She came up with my parents actually to meet us at the hospital. And doctor comes in after they do some x-rays, and he goes, "You ruptured your patellar tendon." And at that point, I remember I just started crying because I never even heard of that injury or anybody having that injury, but I knew it was bad just from my background in strength and conditioning. And for like that was like a Thursday. Friday, we had a few consults, with various surgeons, and one we didn't like, so then we went to another one who I've become good friends with over in Princeton. And that first weekend, though, I was in such a funk, which was not normal for me. Like I couldn't snap myself out of it just because that was my life, was fitness, moving around. And I couldn't, this leg was completely immobilized because the patella tendon, when it's ruptured, you can't walk, you can't, do any of this stuff. But the funny thing is, before that weekend, I actually had a fat loss seminar planned. There's pictures of this that we have. I still put on the seminar, sat in a recliner with my, this big metal brace they gave me on. My leg was all wrapped up. And I think surgery was like that following Monday. But I remember specifically, I was about 2 days in this funk, and then something just snapped in my mind. And I said, look, all the training you've done in the gym throughout the years has prepared you for this. You're going to be able to recover from this, and you're going to be able to use that perseverance and that grit to find your way out of this. Now, it took me a long time, but if I didn't have the background with the bodybuilding in the gym, I don't think I would have been able to go on to do what I've done with my knee, because I actually did the same thing to the other knee about a year and a half later. The same exact injury, which was, to kind of reiterate, the patella tendon. So usually when you rupture a tendon, it comes off the bone. That's called an avulsion fracture, which is very common. A lot of people will rupture a tendon and they don't have any pain. Like you'll see people rupture their Achilles and be like, well, like Kobe, when he ruptured his, he was still able to shoot the free throws. There's usually not pain because the tendon is still intact. My tendon snapped in 4 pieces, vertically and horizontally, and then 3 ligaments tore. The knee capsule blew out. My IT band, that thick band on the outside of your leg, snapped, to all this stuff. And then the same thing happened to the other leg a couple of years later. But within that situation, it was the mindset from the gym that really saved me. And there was a silver lining with it, right? So this is a big thing where I really started practicing reframing. I wrote a book about it, which I've sold to people all over the world to help. And I developed a relationship with Louis Simmons, who has since passed. So Louis was one of my, what I would consider 5, strength and conditioning / fitness mentors. But he was the only one that I could find that had that injury. And I knew he knew his stuff because he was still legendary. He was the top guy in the world. So Louis, actually I had spoken with Louis the summer before, right after we got married. And what impressed me about Louis was I called him out of the blue. And I would do that to this guy. I would call him, say, look, I'll pay you. I'll do whatever. I'm going to pick your brain. Louis kept calling me back until he got in touch with me, which really impressed me. That always stuck with me. Like he wasn't looking for nothing, but he called me back and he spent like an hour. Every time I talked to Louis, it was about an hour, or 6 times I talked to him. Again, this guy's got people all over the world clamoring for his attention. But with the knee, so we really kind of took that relationship to the next level. He gave me a lot of insight on how to recover from it, what protocols to do. And then when I did the second knee, Louis actually called me because I guess he saw something on social media. So he called me to check on me, which, again, I couldn't believe it. So with that, learning that you could persevere. If you can push yourself in the gym and you could push beyond the pain barrier, that's when most people give up. And working out, guys, is really for your brain more than anything else. It's once you feel discomfort, that's when you got to keep going. You can think about how painful it is, or you can just think about what you're doing as far as the next rep, right? All you got to do is make one more rep. That's what you got to keep telling yourself. And that's what I applied to my knee. And then also the silver lining. I could look back at my knee injuries and tell you that those were 2 of the best things that have ever happened to me from what I learned 3 of those things. So that's 3 stories and lessons that I learned from the gym as my teacher. What do you got, Evan Ocon? Any thoughts come to mind with any of that stuff?
Yeah, with your knee injury, when did the doctor tell you to not move, or what did the doctor tell you to do, and then what did you do with that injury?
So the first time, I didn't really know what I was doing. I couldn't move it because the patella tendon was snapped until I had the surgery. Now, once you do the surgery, what they tell you is to put it in there's this huge metal brace you have that's locked at 0 degrees. You're not supposed to move it for 6 weeks, right? But what happens then, because there's so much damage in the surgery, you build up, you lay down a lot of scar tissue. So when you go to actually start rehabbing it, you could let it hang off the edge of a table, it won't move, which is scary because you could try to move it. It's not going to move though. So 4 months into that process, I still only had 72 degrees range of motion. So you could get about 130. I was about a little more than half of what you could get. I knew I didn't have to get full range of motion because I had big legs and that wasn't something I needed. But with the second time around, everything I'd learned through the first time and writing the book, I applied the second time and I recovered much, much quicker. I was able to drive within 6 weeks of the injury. And that was my driving leg the second time. So I went against all the stuff that the doc, who was the same surgeon, had told me. And he was very curious about my recovery protocol. He said, how did you do this? I said, well, I used heat. I got out of the brace, got off the crutches right away. I started moving, started deadlifting, stuff where I didn't need the range of motion, but I was doing that within like 2 weeks. And one of the things I told him too, going into it, because when he called me after the MRI, he felt awful, right? Because he had said after the first one, remember he told my buddy who had to go to a consult with him, he said, that is the worst, and this guy is a knee surgeon, because that's the worst knee injury I've ever heard of. And then I did it a second time. So when he called me with the news, me and Devin already knew the second time. I turned down the ambulance. It was at another men's league game. He just kept apologizing. Oh, I'm so sorry. And I said, it's okay. And then when I was going in for the surgery, going under, he's talking to me briefly before the anesthesia. And again, he's really just felt terrible. I said, Doc, it's okay. I said, I know how to do this now. So it's not a big deal. So he actually asked me, it never wound up happening, but he had asked me at the next follow-up if I could come in and talk to the surgeons about my mindset with how to recover from something like that. But yeah, that's a little bit about the injury.
Yeah, so you think like the mindset and then just moving and not staying like bedridden for however long they tell you, what, like 6 months? What do they say?
6 weeks, you're not supposed to bend it at all. Yeah, definitely the mindset and movement. The human body is not meant to sit still. It will not heal that way. You got to get the blood going. You got to get the good chemicals, the good hormones going to your brain, right? You got to do all this. So basically, after that, I really kind of figured out what they tell you with any injury is really for they have liability at the front of their mind, and it's really for the Homer Simpsons out there that are just wanting to sit on the couch anyhow, not do anything, which, that's not me.
Cool.
Yeah. So clearly, like that was one huge struggle in your life, right? That you had to surpass. So would you say, because nobody's perfect, right? At the end of the day, a lot of people are watching this through the video and probably will idolize you in a sense, and maybe a lot of people will look at you as this perfect guy who has these gyms and he's working out like crazy and nothing can go wrong, But you are a human at the end of the day, and you do go through struggles. So what would you say to, I guess, people listening on how to get over those obstacles when life does hit you like that? Do you think is it the gym that's helping you, or is the gym is what the foundation is to really get your mind to grow like that? Yeah,
it's a great question. It is definitely, the gym is my, what I could always turn to change my state of mind. Just as, you guys too, I'm sure if you hit a workout, all of a sudden the problems don't seem so big. But building the confidence, but with that, the reason I study that, I'm always studying mindset stuff, right? And then I try to apply it, is because I've always struggled with that, with mindset and lack of confidence and all that. Like, that's what drove me to begin lifting in the first place, right? Like I said, and I think it does for a lot of people, but I don't care who you are. Everybody's got, at some level, they lack confidence and lack self-belief if they can figure out the next step, right? But the gym has always kind of been, my mecca where I can go to. I can get solitude. I can train hard, think more clearly, push through and build that little bit of confidence. But it's, I don't think that lack of confidence ever completely goes away 100%.
Yeah, there's a saying, like when we walk in the wrestling room, the coaches tell you all your problems disappear as soon as you walk through this door. So it's just like lifting, right? Like as soon as you start doing what you love doing, it's all your problems, all the worries, it all goes away.
Spot on, because you got to be present in the moment. Right? The only time we have fear or anxiety is when we're thinking about the future or thinking about some other point in right now. So being in that wrestling room and just being in the moment, it should be a very, meditative thing, I would imagine. When you're in the flow and you're doing stuff, you can't really be thinking about other stuff. Just like if you're training in the gym, you're training hard. It's hard to think about, if you're able to think about other stuff, you're not training that hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else, boys?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that covers it.
So, yeah, I have one more question just to touch up on from the mentality standpoint. So, like, you went through all that in your life, just kind of building everything you did, like all those failures and successes, it built on your mentality. So, what are you doing? So, right now, what are you doing to push your mentality?
Well, just finished the Indigo Panda last week,
Yep.
right? Which was, I could probably, I was writing about that recently. I was actually writing more of the book today. Probably the hardest physical thing I've done just because of the duration of it. And physically it was okay, but mentally I knew the whole reason I did the Indigo and created that was to challenge myself mentally and make myself uncomfortable and get into those dark places because you're going to get fatigued. But now I know when I feel that, or I feel that's the mental resistance training. So it's really been reframing that when I have doubts about the business, right? When I have doubts about whatever it is, trying to be a better father, I know that you need that to grow, right? And then on top of that, doing 75 hard now, I think today's day, well, I don't think I know, today's day 43, which is, it's 75 hard, right? We went over that last week a little bit, but it's, the 5 criteria that you have to do every day. If you miss anything, you have to start over. So a gallon of water, 2 workouts a day, at least 45 minutes. One has to be outside. No cheating on your diet, no alcohol. Reading 10 pages a day in a progress picture every day. And that's really kind of helped, challenge my mind and get it refocused. It reminds me a lot of when I was competing, getting focused and just being like, I'm going to do this. It doesn't matter what it takes. You fit it in, you figure it out. But then that discipline and that focus carries over to everything else. And the next thing I really have to get back to is my daily visualization, which I've been slacking off on a little bit. But that's the next thing I got to add back in.
Sweet. So for people who don't know, so you did 75 hard and the Indigo Panda at the same time. So for people who don't know, what is the Indigo Panda? Like, what exactly did you do? So
the Indigo Panda was based off my original Panda diet. So the original, right, the black version is a 48-hour fast, 1 meal a day. And I take people through that for 6 weeks. That's how I live. That's my lifestyle. But with the Indigo, it was really more of a, when I thought it up last spring, I didn't know all the details. I just kind of knew what I wanted it to do. So it was really to challenge the mind and the spirit. So what that was I knew you had to push the body hard when you're in a longer fast, where most people back off when they're in the fast. So I did a 5-day fast to start. That was leg 1. I was looking at it like a race almost. That was leg 1. 2 workouts a day throughout the whole thing because I'm doing 75 hard. Then I ate. So I went from Sunday night. The next meal was a Friday night. Then I went right into a 4-day fast. So the next meal was a Tuesday night. And that was probably the hardest day of the whole thing physically, was that day 9. So I was starting to drag a little bit. And then I broke it, went right back into a 3-day fast. So it was like a tiered system, 5, 4, 3. And with that, the next meal was Friday. Then I did I had planned out, I had one more, a 48-hour fast. So that was the 2-day to finish up. It was going to be Friday to Sunday. And what I had determined with Devin, I knew the capstone was going to be doing a 12-hour walk based off Colin Brady's book, to kind of just be alone with my thoughts, no phone, none of that stuff. So I did the 12-hour walk that Saturday night, basically 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. up in the mountains in the Sourlands by myself, and then got home, so you had the sleep deprivation on top of it, which I wasn't really thinking that was going to be an issue, but that was a little tricky. But it was good. And then I hopped right back, ate Sunday, hopped right back into my regular. I took last week off from a 48-hour fast. I just did one meal a day. And, this week back to my regular scheduled program.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I got a question that now that you brought that up. For someone that's like, because for me, if I told myself, okay, I'm going to do the 75 hard, right? And then all of a sudden you add the Indigo into that. How does someone, like, based off your expertise and your like experience, how do you get past like taking on another obstacle at the same time? Like, is there like a meditation that you go through, like to not have yourself overwhelmed over things? Like, I think that's a huge thing for people. Is sometimes in life we kind of add so many things or try to add things on top of the other, and then it gets very overwhelming, and then people just drop out of it. You know what I mean?
So what you're saying, when you're stacking two difficult things back to back,
Yeah.
or on top of each other,
Yeah.
like I knew in this example that Indigo was just going to be part of the 75 hard journey, but I knew that nothing, so I kind of leveraged it, right? There wasn't anything else. I didn't have to add anything else, right? I just made it a little more difficult with what I did. We had to be able to compartmentalize. So that's where the mind comes in. There's a lot of, it's a lot of inner dialogue. It's what it all comes down to, the conversation that you're having in your head, and then observing where those thoughts are coming from and what they're saying, because it's not you, right? It's like the lower self and the higher self. So you have to really kind of control that. So I think whatever you're doing, if you're getting overwhelmed, you got to pay attention to where's my focus, right? Because where your focus goes, energy flows. And if you just ask yourself that question, you'll be able to say, well, I'm thinking about this, what might go wrong. Or I'm thinking about how hard this is going to be, right? Which is the wrong thing to be thinking. You should be thinking that this is going to build me up. This is making me tougher and tougher and tougher. So it's really compartmentalizing. And then really stepping into the next level, like leveling up, right? Leveling up and realizing if you want to play at a higher level, you got to do things that are going to be harder, that you haven't done before, that you got to figure out how to do. Otherwise, you can't really stay the same. You're either going backwards or you're growing. So it all comes down to the mindset, and flooding your brain with positive messages, because your brain is hardwired for the negative. It's always going to focus on what could go wrong or what the threat is, why this thing should be stressing you. So really coming back to the present moment as much as you can. And you can do that through breathing exercises. I usually do that in the morning, but really trying to center yourself and not live in the future, because the future doesn't exist.
Yeah, it also seems like that you're constantly putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations to the point where you're almost comfortable over there at that uncomfortable spot,
Yeah, it's funny because my buddy Frank, we went out to eat for his 45th on, you guys all know Frank. Yeah. He's a tough guy, strong guy. He'd said something to me maybe last week. He's like, you love that, making yourself feel pain. I don't think it's that I love making myself feel pain. I just know what the payoff is. If other people are not willing to do it, that gives you a huge advantage, because you're, again, going back to that confidence piece, knowing that you can do something really tough where other people could do it. There's nothing, physical. There's no physical gift necessarily that I have that other people don't have. So it's really, once you frame it in your head, and this is they do this a lot in martial arts. They train the mind just as much as they do the body, because they know that that's what has to be done. So it is that mental resistance training. The only way you get stronger is to apply, pressure and resistance against, just like your muscles. If you want them to get bigger and stronger, you got to lift heavier and heavier weight or push yourself harder. Same thing goes for your brain. So that I think it's just a paradigm shift on the way most people think. Most people avoid discomfort, right? The human body wants to seek out comfort, but that's never going to lead to the highest place you can go.
So what would you tell people at home listening how to start diving into something like that? Because a lot of people would be very discouraged of doing a 5-day fast tied in with a 75 hard. Some people need to kind of slowly get into it, or even just try to expand their mental toughness. What would you recommend for just people?
As far as getting more mentally tough?
Yeah, just starting to go down that road. Like how would you?
First thing I would do is just start listening to stuff on the topic and reading stuff on the topic. and then, that plants the seed in your head about, okay, maybe let me go for a run today or something like that. Let me get up a little bit earlier today, right? So it's these small things you stack on top of each other, and it's the discipline really, because it's really, to me, the same thing. It's a muscle, so you got to work it more. The more you work it, the more it grows. Now, if I stop doing everything that I'm doing, everything, over time, you revert back. You go backwards. You don't stay the same.
And I think that's the huge importance of the gym as well. That's where you get that structure of what you're gonna, exercise that day, and that's just you're starting your day for success, right?
Yeah,
and you could add on to that as you go.
Yeah, I'm a big believer working out in the morning. You feel better, right? You get all those growth factors that go into your brain only through physical movement. You feel better. You've conquered something. You've done something hard. And then the rest of the day, right, like you said, you set yourself up for success, knowing that, okay, I already did something to move the chains, right? I always think of moving the chains. Move the chains 1 yard at a time, 2 yards, 3 yards, maybe a 5-yard play, and then you just keep doing that.
That's awesome. Yeah. So just with that's like the beauty of the Indigo Panda, which just so you ate 4 meals in 21 days, right?
2 weeks.
14 days.
14 days, yeah.
14 days. So you only had 4 meals in 14 days. And you went on a 12-hour walk.
And you exercised like crazy.
Exercise twice a day.
How many calories on those meals?
I tracked the one and I got bored of it. It was 6,200 was the first meal.
In an hour?
Maybe an hour and a half. I don't know.
Yeah, I
didn't really time it. It was just really until I was full, until I felt like I wanted to fast again. But yeah, it was.
What'd you eat
at that meal?
Yeah,
I did about almost a bowl of mixed nuts, very cashews, and it's one of my favorites. But pistachio stuff like that, chicken broth and fruit. The big giant bowl of fruit. That's how I started. Then I went into the main meal, which was basically, I think I wound up having about 3 burgers. Some organic ground beef on Dave's Killer Bread. I did a potato with it. I think I had Brussels sprouts, and then I believe I did like 4 of the oatmeal packets with peanut butter and stuff mixed in. 6 eggs too, 6 whole cage-free whole eggs. I think that was it. All I had. I actually got a tomahawk steak this weekend though at Ruth's Chris. It's the most expensive item on the menu. I've never been there before, but it was worth it. In the steak, when I'm looking at it, was 40 ounces. Never had a tomahawk before. Have any of you guys had a tomahawk?
I haven't.
That big bone.
Huge bone coming out. But it said next to it was like 3,100 calories. So then, Mikey was there and some of the guys. So I, did that. No problem. I got appetizers, got a bunch of sides and did that. All stuff that kind of fits with what I'm doing with 75 Hard. The way I look at it is if there's nutrition in the food, I'm staying away from desserts and alcohol right now. But yeah, that's about 6,000 is a pretty good meal.
We got to get you to do some like man versus food challenges.
Yeah, that would be good. I was telling Devin, if we decide to do some video on that, I can definitely put myself in that state where we could do probably, like I used to do a 25,000 calorie day.
I was at in Rhode Island for the weekend, and one of the breakfast spots we went to was called the Hungry Monkey, and it was on man versus food. It was a 15 egg omelet with like a bunch of potatoes, a bunch of toast, and I think it's only 32 people ever finished it. And it was like 1,000 people tried.
15 egg omelet.
Yeah, 15 egg, but it's loaded with onions, peppers, ham, all this stuff, and then it's potatoes, a bunch of home fries, and then a stack of toast.
Sounds delicious. Doesn't seem like it would be that hard.
Yeah, as soon as you said 6,200 calories, I was thinking in my mind, I was like, Kyle would murder that.
Yeah. especially after a 5-day fast. I mean,
yeah. I could definitely do more than 6,200 in a meal, but coming off of that, stomach capacity is a little bit limited.
That's true. Yeah.
I thought I would be able to eat more, to be honest with you, at that meal.
The stomach shrinks though.
It doesn't shrink. The enzymes kind of get down regulated.
Oh, okay.
Kind of go to sleep a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
That's cool though with the Indigo. So it's not just you. Even though you lost, what'd you lose? Like half your body fat?
Yeah, it went from 11. Started at 11, and I went to 6.1 by the end of it.
Wow.
And muscle pretty much maintained. I mean, I felt flat, like we used to say in bodybuilding terms. I didn't feel like I had much in the tank because I didn't. But yeah, so 2 weeks almost cutting body fat. 11's pretty lean to begin with, but cutting that in half. So it shows, it showed me, and I knew that was potentially possible. But you could get lean quickly if you're willing to pay the price. You don't have to drag it out for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
There's actually this one video that went like viral the other day with I think it was Zac Efron. Was it him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about his secret to him being shredded, and he says he doesn't eat on the weekends. He just completely doesn't eat on the weekends.
Yeah,
and does like fasting and stuff. So I guess that is the secret.
He does your one meal. He only has one meal a day.
Yeah, he does. He does exactly like what you. Yeah, it's crazy. It was like, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean it is. It's like a cheat code.
Yeah.
Most people still have this negative thing in their head about it. They're going to lose muscle. You won't lose muscle. You won't do any of that. I know the guy the founder of Twitter. He would do that too, Jack Dorsey, where he would do, he would go like 48s, kind of like I do. He'd do a 48. He would also do, I think, 2 cold baths per day. But some of these guys are onto something, right? They achieved that level of success. They've tapped into it.
I think, that is definitely something people are hesitant of for doing the fast, especially these people that are super into lifting. They're scared that their muscle is going to diminish, but that's not the case at all, right?
No.
That was one thing that I was going to tell you too, is on my 5-day fast, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was like completely fine working out. I was drained on Thursday and Friday. I couldn't even work out. Like it was like, I don't know what it was. Maybe it's my first time or something like that.
What's that? But then your glycogen, that's what happens. Your glycogen runs out, which is stored in your liver and your muscles. Once that runs, that's the quick energy source, right? Once that's gone, basically you're running off body fat. There's a conversion process, and once you get adapted to that, you should be okay. Like we all have pretty much, no matter how lean you are, you still have hundreds of thousands of calories of fat to use as energy. But when you're transitioning to it, it's not comfortable.
It's like it's that gap period, right?
It's kind of the gap here. You're going to run on like fumes. You're not going to, like that one morning, I think it was the Tuesday or whatever, it was just kind of shot.
Yeah, I told you about that with my 48-hour when I woke up. I think it was the third day in because I had started a little later in the day. And then it was like very hard for me to get up. Like I felt really weak. But then once I got up and started going, I got my fuel back.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Very common though.
That's awesome.
We're just the Cubs in the Panda Man world,
Yep.
Well,
all right. I think this went really well.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you for tuning in to Unlocking Your Inner Strength. Make sure you leave a review. I want to get that review number up. Make sure you subscribe so it comes right into your the top of your podcast playlist. And spread the word. Hit the share button if you liked it. If you liked anything in here, share it with a friend.